Behind every record in my collection is a story. This is just one of them. So, Joe Cocker, a little help from my friends. This album, bam, there it is. Check him out, dude. He's a crazy guy, right? So, Joe Cocker is like known for his like raspy voice, and he's got like an animated stage presence. When he was performing, he used to tweak out, dude. I mean, he was like feeling the music. I mean, on the album cover here, you can just see how much he's feeling it, dude. And it's funny. If you're a old school Saturday Night Live fan, there's a skit where John Belushi does a impersonation of Joe Cocker, you know, on stage singing. And I forgot what song he was singing, dude, but man, he was tweaking out, dude. Uh, making this crazy face. And if you know John Belushi, you know he's a crazy dude. It totally fit, you know, his impersonation of Joe Cocker. He was spot on, dude. But anyway, so that's kind of what Joe Cocker was known for. And in retrospect, I remember seeing, I have a memory of Joe Cocker. I think it was because he played at Woodstock. I think I remember as a kid seeing on TV some kind of clip from Woodstock where he was singing. And because he's so animated and has such a, crazy stage presence, I remembered that as a kid. But the first time I heard Joe Cocker, I remember I was riding with my mom in the car, and I remember it was a rainy day too, because she had the windshield wipers on, and the radio was on, and that song "You Are So Beautiful" came on the radio, which totally stood out because, I mean, that was the time when there was a lot of soft rock being played, like Carpenters, I don't know, just soft rock. I can't even think right now, dude. Just a bunch of like mellow stuff on the radio. And this Joe Cocker song came on, and it was also like a ballad, just pretty much a piano and stuff. And yeah, he was singing, and even though it was like a mellow kind of ballad, soft kind of song, his voice is so raspy and gritty. It just sounded super intense, you know? And I was like, so that stuck to me too. Uh, and it wasn't until like this song, Little Help with My Friends, from my friends, this song, I missed it in the 70s. Uh, I don't know, I was listening to a lot of classic rock back then just because my parents were, and it was just, the contemporary music of the times in the 70s. But for some reason, the cover of this song, I mean, this is a cover song. I mean, for if it's not obvious, Little Help from My Friends is a Beatles song sang by Ringo Starr, which is a big Beatles song. And but I never heard this cover of it. Now, this is cool because, all right, if you're going to cover a Beatles song, especially like a big hit like that song, you pretty much got balls, dude, because touching any of the Beatles hits, it's kind of like blasphemy, dude, because they were so big and respected. It's like, to cover one of their songs is like, you know, it's a brave thing because chances are your version isn't going to be better, you know. And the thing about doing a cover, you don't want to cover a song and just have it sound the same, because like what's the point in that? You're just like, oh, I can do that too. It makes you look weak, right? But so if you do a cover, you want to put your spin on it somehow, uh I think a lot of people they do covers of songs that are like not really known. Maybe some songs that are like old that people may have missed or for whatever reason just never really got popular. But if a song is good, uh, then it could be great, And sometimes people recognize, hey, that's a good song. I mean, it, you know, a good example is the song Jimi Hendrix, "Hey Joe." That's a cover song. The first band who did that song, I don't even know if they had a modest hit with that. I don't even think it was that, like even that. I think it was just kind of obscure. But when Jimi Hendrix did it, it just became a super hit. So if a song is good, uh, if the right band plays it, it could be a hit. And so anyway, Joe Cocker, check him out, dude. He comes out with this album, and I think this is from 1969. Uh, so he comes out. It's not even that long after the Beatles, have their record out. It's still fresh in the heads of everyone because it was a big hit. So he comes out with this album, and the name of the album is "With a Little Help from My Friends." So he's pushing it as like, yeah, I'm covering a Beatles song, and not only am I covering it, it's the name of my album. I want everyone to hear it because, yeah, the Beatles song is cool, but my version of it is cool too, And it's like, all right, let's hear it. So, anyway, it comes out, and obviously it becomes a hit. And like I said, I missed it. Uh, Obviously, I wasn't born when it was out, but I was uh, a kid in the '70s, and they were playing a lot of music from the '60s in the '70s. So I would have heard it on the radio, at some point, but I didn't. I told you I heard that other song of his, which was at that time like a new song, a newer song. So anyway, man, now we go into the '80s, and there's a show called The Wonder Years, that show is funny, dude, because it's about a kid growing up in the '60s, and he's like, he's going through all these. I think he's like 10 years old or whatever, and so he's going through all these things that a 10-year-old kid goes through in the '70s. He lives in this house with his parents. He has an older brother and an older sister, and his sister's a teenager. His older brother's like, a couple years older than him. So, if I'm from the '70s too, I'm from the '70s. This is from the '60s, but it's not that far apart. But it doesn't even matter what year back then. If you're like grow up in a family, you go through these family ties, you go through these things growing up as a kid with other kids and going to school and girlfriends and puberty and all this stuff. It's just drama in the family, the old sibling, 18-year-old sibling fighting with the parents, screaming at each other. I mean, you know, uh, friends, dying, they went into the where they were being drafted in the Vietnam War and stuff. Like, so yeah, it was going through all these crazy things, man. It was a great show. But anyway, the theme song to that show, it was this cover version of "With a Little Help from My Friends" by Joe Cocker, and it was totally fitting because this song, it kind of sounds like that era, you know. It starts out kind of soft, and then it kind of gets, a little, you know, it starts rocking, but with like this kind of organ. It's a little soulful sounding too, a little gospel sounding. Anyway, but it was an edited version of this song because if you're gonna do a intro to a TV show, it has to be like I guess 30 seconds or less, something like that. So every week I would hear this song because I was watching that show. It was a big show, man. It was like one of the number one shows back then. And so every week I would listen to it, and I was like, it was like in rotation, man. It's like a playlist. I'm hearing it every week, so it's in my head, and it's growing on me every time I hear it. I'm like, I'm starting to like it more and more, dude. And I'm like, man, this song is cool. And I'm like, why didn't I hear this in the '70s? Because I was hearing so many other classic rock songs from the '60s and even a lot of rock and roll from the '50s. I was hearing in the '70s, and then I was like you know what? I probably because during this time, this must have been like what 86, 87. I was like super into hip hop, which at that time hip hop was still like new and things were happening with hip hop. It seemed like every week, every month, hip hop was just changing and growing, and it was just an exciting time for hip hop music. And I was totally plugged into that and kind of like had tunnel vision where I was on the hip hop train and I was just moving, you know, passing everything else, not even really paying attention. But then I started to make beats and I was digging for samples. And when I was digging for samples, looking for old records to find drum breaks and all that stuff, then I remember I saw this record at the Santa Cruz flea market, and I was like, "Oh, Joe Cocker!" And then I picked it up and I saw it right away with a little help from my friends. You know, I was like, "Oh man, this is that song, dude!" And so I bought that record not to sample it, but just because I wanted that song. I like that song, and I'm like, "Dude, I gotta have this, man." So I bought it, and bought it for like $1. Back then, dude, flea market was like the best place to get records because they were always cheap, dude. Always cheap. So anyway, I buy the record, I go home, and I put it on my turntable and I play it in my room and I crank it up. And now I'm hearing the whole song because you got to understand before I was just hearing it on the TV show. Because back then if you didn't own the music, you couldn't play it when you wanted to hear it. You had to get lucky, and by chance, they would play it on the radio, the classic rock station or something, and then you would hear it. And but even if you heard it after it was done, you couldn't hear it again unless you had the record, like I said, or the cassette or whatever CD. So I finally got the record and I was like, all right, cool. Now I can just listen to this song whenever I want. Man, it's an epic song. It's such a good cover, dude. Like, this cover is like Joe Joe Cocker made this song his own. It's kind of like he took it from the Beatles because I would much rather listen to this version of that song than the Beatles version, which I ain't taking anything away from Ringo Starr, who sings that song, and it's a classic Beatles song. But man, in comparison, dude, this Joe Cocker version is just so much better, dude. And yeah, it's just cool. It kind of like just lets you know how you can flip a cover. You know, it's like I said, songs that are good songs, they have the potential with the right artist to be great songs, classic songs, legendary songs, dude. And this is one of those, man. So Joe Cocker, dude, check him out, dude. The consummate artist. He's just like way into it, man. So anyway, yeah, if you haven't heard any of Joe Cocker's stuff, check it out, dude. He's got, like I said, he's got this original style of singing, and his voice is, when he's singing, you can tell it's Joe Cocker, dude. He's that original where, you know, He's his own brand, his own artist, dude. So anyway, yeah, Joe Cocker. There's another song on this album called "All Right." I actually heard that back in the days on classic rock radio. I think I even heard it in the 70s just when they were playing it just on rock radio. And that's a hit too. It's a nice classic rock hit with piano, guitars and backup vocals, Uh it's a cool song too. And there's another song called Sandpaper Cadillac. That's a good one too. There's a couple other ones that are alright too, dude. Check it out for yourself, man. Alright, dude. Joe Cocker. So I hope you liked the video. That was that. You want to like it, you can do that. If you're into subscribing, that's an option. Otherwise, until next video, peace and vinyl.